Message board, I saw a discussion amongst anonymous parents debating the merits of whether or not they're allowed to yell at players, coaches, referees, etc. during games. And the basic argument went, I pay my money to get in, and therefore I can yell at whoever I want. And then the other side was, parents are acting crazy now with how much they're yelling, and they need to, kind of calm down and be quiet. And I don't know whether paying $7 to get into a high school game gives you a legal right to yell at referees or coaches or players. And I certainly know that the heat of the moment, people will often behave in ways that they otherwise wouldn't and come to a regret. But this seemed to be more speaking of persistent problems or parents yelling out more than just one or two things, but kind of yelling throughout games. And as a referee, I've certainly seen this, on the soccer side when I referee soccer with parents who, yell throughout the game, whether they're yelling at their own daughter or son or, their teammates or their coach or the referees, but they have something to say almost throughout a game. And it is something that is concerning to a lot of people within youth sports. And my biggest thing is not whether or not the parents should be yelling at referees or coaches or so on and so forth, but how it affects the players. And just judging by players' body language when I'm refereeing these games, it certainly affects them negatively. And to the point where I've had players turn around and yell at their parents to be quiet. I've had coaches walk across the field and yell at parents and tell them to be quiet, and tell them that they're, telling their son or daughter conflicting things to what the coach is trying to teach. I've had parents on the same team get in arguments because one's yelling at the other's child and they take offense and then they start arguing with each other. I heard of even grandparents. I heard of a under what was it, fifth grade? So under 10, under 11 girls basketball game during the spring where two grandparents got in an argument and nearly came to blows. Two grandmothers almost came to blows during a game because of the way that they were either yelling at their own team or at different teams or whatever. So there are definite instances. I remember even, 15 years ago when I coached AAU, I saw a brawl between parents of two teams at just a local AAU tournament. So it's not something that's new, but I do think that the biggest thing to me as a coach is how the yelling affects the players. And I do think that it affects the players negatively, and the parents and the coaches can create a negative environment for the players, and an environment that puts more pressure on the players. And on the other side of it, I do think that constant yelling, parents constantly yelling at referees or, coach constantly yelling at referees can give the players kind of an out or an excuse, one, for them to behave poorly or them to start yelling at referees, but also just a general excuse that, to explain away a poor performance. Well, it was the referee's fault, and I heard you yelling at the referee the whole game, so you obviously thought that the referee was bad and that's why I couldn't play well or that's why we lost or whatever the case may be. And so I think these set up dangerous dynamics. And so to me, it's not a matter of whether or not a parent has a legal right to yell at their own child or to yell at coaches or referees or teammates or whatever. But to me, it's more how does that yelling in that environment affect the players? And for many players, I do think it has a negative effect, and it hampers the fun that the players are having. It puts added pressure to perform. I think it often puts a form of social pressure on the child in terms of a lot of children will feel almost embarrassed that their parents yelling. And I think that kind of creates a social pressure or anxiety. And so there's a number of different negative outcomes from the parents yelling. And so whether or not there's a legal right or a moral right to yell, my advice is that for the benefit of your own child is not to be the parent that's yelling and screaming all the time, whether that yelling and screaming is directed at the referees, directed at your own child, or directed at the team in general, because none of those create a positive reaction for your child. The reaction is somewhere from neutral to negative. Very rarely is there, a positive reaction to a parent who's constantly yelling. Again, regardless of where that the volume of yelling is directed. And so to create a better environment for players, and especially the younger players, that's one of the things that we need to promote is a more positive environment, and one where the players are allowed to perform and to do their best, and without worrying about what's happening on the sidelines, whether it's their own coach or whether it's the parent sideline, and they can simply go out and play and have fun and enjoy the experience, and receive coaching, receive feedback, but not have to worry about what's going on outside of the lines as well.